All right. Good evening, guys. Nightly strategy podcast for Sunday, July 24th, 2022. If you're a Patreon subscriber or a student in any of the courses, this is free chicken for you. This is when you get to have any questions you have answered if you'll send me the questions. There was only one chart posted tonight, so this one will be a short one. All right, so this is Luke's 5-minute Aussie with multi-time frame, multi-lens analysis. So he normally trades on a 5-minute, and now he's added 3 extra time periods for context. 5 minutes times 12 gets you up to an hourly bars, times 8 gets you up to 8 hourly bars, times 3 gets you up to the daily bars. So the daily bars are showing very clear turning points in the RL30. You might want to know that about the Aussie dollar, the size of these kinds of typical moves, that if you can get the turning point on a daily correct, then you have some reason to expect a short-term follow-through. This is one that had two legs. Here's a consolidation area, and here's the second leg. This one had 2 legs up, consolidation and test, second leg. Oh, 1 leg, consolidation, and 2 and 3. So you might want to know that it behaves like that on a daily basis. When you expand that and zoom in to an 8-hour bars, this is what you get. That little congestion zone, which when it broke on a collapsing dragon gave you a tradable move, this little consolidation zone is right here. Here's your rapid move on leg 1 and leg 2, and now here's the turning point. So why are we interested in turning points? Well, we're interested in turning points in those instruments that have long orderly moves on those time frames, like this one. Like, notice this one on the 8-hour when it moved up as high as it could, and it was in the summer, and then couldn't go any further, and then entered the dragon and then left the dragon. Maybe you want to know when that price RL10 crosses the dragon, that looks like a decisive signal on this time frame. Notice that the RL10 couldn't even get through the dragon and then rolled over again. Maybe you want to know that in your target of choice so that you can pick up a tactical orientation for direction. Every one of these on the 8-hour breakdown is another collapsing dragon on these moves. If we had come and look at the hourly, if we'd taken a look just at this frame on hourly charts, you would have seen many opportunities to continue to get short and write it down. And you can keep that orientation until you get a P1 or even the 30 crossing the 270. Look how nice the 270 acts as a directional bias. Like, notice when the 30 crosses the 270, you get all of this, and here's where it crosses the 270, and now it's all up, and that signal comes to you here, so you actually have this tradable moment. You might want to know that about your symbol of choice. And even on the hourly chart, when the 30 crosses the 270, 1, 2, 3, that's interesting. And now this is very interesting. Why would that be interesting? Because the 30, if this fails, that 30 is going to come back and cross the 270, and then we have some reasonable expectation that it could test this turning point, and that turning point. So you now have reasonable targets to the downside against a very small measured risk. So Luke better know what those price levels are. And if this 30 crosses the 270, he should have that set as an alert so that he can adopt a downside orientation in all his trades, because the upside orientation gave you this much. Notice the difference between the 30 and the 270. This area in here is the buffer zone, or the extra juice you get for having the long side bias. But when that crosses, you probably get the same kind of thing like you do over here between the 270 and the 30 on the longer time frame. Notice it has the same behavioral characteristics. That is a fractal. When you see that kind of relationship in multiple time frames, you now know that there's something like a natural or normal relationship between the fast, in this case the 30, and the 270, the slow, and that turning point is decisive. Now he's marked off the key price levels, like this would be his entry when it takes out the previous bar. And then it eclipses the dragon, the top of the RL10, and then the Z3 are all-time high. So each one of these acts as a tripwire where he could be thinking about adding positions. Similarly to the downside, this is the entry on a violation of that bar's low. It's also a collapsing dragon off that dragon. This one is a breaking of the Z2. This one breaks the dragon belly here. And this one breaks the all-time swing low right there. Not all-time, but the peak excursion to the downside. And if that fails, look out below. It's coming to here and coming to here. And that's going to be a huge trade for him. So now when I look at this on a daily basis, I'm now noticing these resistance and support levels. And now this little price action here, that little yellow zone sitting all by itself, that's this. This is the run up that it had. That's this. Up into this rebound off the bottom where there's a pause. It's pausing. It went up and came all the way back. So it's in a pause. What's it going to do? I don't know, but it's in a compound critical state. You can see that this thing has a significant upward move that it can make, and it's made that pretty fast before. And it can make a downside move of significance. It made that from here just to here. So that's how fast these things can go in a matter of about, 10 days. It can move down that far and up that far in 10 days. And now he's got initial confirmation alerts that if this thing starts moving, tripwires, click, 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 he should be fully invested with money in hand by the time it begins its breakout. So it doesn't really have a confirmed breakout till it gets above this highest green line in that stack, which is here. And then the next one is this one on the daily, which is this one on the 8 hour. And that's this one where it is on the daily. So there's lots of room for this thing to break out and go. So he's got a nice frame here, and now he can use all three of these time frames, daily, 8 hour, hourly, to feed actionable information to his 5-minute time frame of choice. So he can trade the 5-minute time frame tactically according to his rules, but he also knows that there are some crucial price levels and trigger points that people trading the longer term time frame are going to be paying attention to. And this relationship here between the RL30 And the 270 looks to be pretty important. Look how fast this thing rolled over. That tells you that this had no legs. It's supposed to go, and it didn't. It just rolled over and collapsed. Nice to know. And now the downside is easy to see. And now all it's done is climb out of the basement to this foundational price level. And what's it going to do from there? We don't know, but we have a nice frame that tells us what to do no matter which way it goes. So nice work, Lou. Salvador Dali's Alice in Wonderland. I want to be Salvador Dali. That's all I have for today. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little executive summary of the work that we did today in the Creativity 202, Fletcher Treatment for Traders. We're about 5 lessons into this. This was our 6th session. The lesson 0 was the introduction. And we're doing weekly studies and collaboration groups, one with a group of Euros and one with a group of US and Aussies. This week's lesson from Fletcher, Angus Fletcher, was a historical study of the difference between revolutionary and evolutionary changes, and was concerned with the trigger and how do you know it's time to do that. And then if you decide to do revolutionary change, how do you do that revolutionary change? The particular historical case study was kind of timely. We didn't plan it that way, but it turned out to be. It was a story of the birth of the Top Gun program for the Navy and Marine Corps, just in time for this Top Gun Maverick movie. And it was a time when they were facing existential threats in the form of enemy pilots that were shooting them out of the skies. How could they respond to that? Trying to do more of the same or take a dramatic revolutionary change? The Navy and Marine Corps opted for the revolutionary change. And how did they know that they were on the right path towards revolutionary change? Because there's a lot of ways you can revolute. How do we know? How do you know? My exercises were to explore this idea of knowing when you're at a crossroads. And again, evolution versus revolution. And I talked about the nature of making changes when you're actually inside 4-dimensional dynamic systems. 4th dimension being time. And then the importance of the connections that we make in our networks. This phrase came out of the session that really resonated. And that was, when you think about yourself being at an important crossroads, that the risks you must take, and that's a choice. You decide that there is a risk that you must take. That's going to lead to the choices you must make. So you feel you must take that risk. How you're going to express that is a choice that you must make. So we can look at the alignment between the risks you take and the choices you make. We explored the metaphor and story of baby turtles trying to get to the sea and what that is like. We talked about the rules for listening that we've been developing at our youth soccer camp. Turns out that there's 2 rules. No talking. Two, look in my eyes. And those were rules that the kids developed because I asked them, how would I know if they were listening? And they said, well, If we're listening, then we can't be talking. So that's a rule. And the second thing is we need to be looking in your eyes so that you can see that we're focusing on you. And you can tell from where our eyes are going if we are attending to the listening. I talked about my personal story about planning for exits in military operations in my 2 years working with General Stan McChrystal, and what it was like working with him for plans and operations when we were both 30 years younger in the 3rd Ranger Battalion. We talked also about the small differences in phrases that make huge differences in practice. The difference between the phrase just a trade and a trade. When you get rid of the word just, suddenly the fact that it is a trade takes on a much greater significance. The word just acts as a way to denigrate the importance of a particular trade. We don't want it to be ridiculed or ignored or minimized. We want that trade to be significant. And then think about the difference between a trade, calling something a trade, and calling it the trade. The trade that you are in brings on almost a sacred significance and existential significance to what it is you choose to do in that moment, which is connected to the focusing philosophy of the Japanese samurai expressed in the Hagakure, in which they talk about only needing 7 breaths to decide what to do on life's most important decisions. You can only do that if you are firmly and continuously connected to your values, purpose, mission, and vision. Then when new information comes in and you evaluate the new situation, in 7 breaths, you know what it is you need to do, and then you just do it. If it takes you more than 7 breaths, then it may be that you have neglected consideration of that which is most important. That's what the Hagakure would offer. It might work. I don't know. And then all of us were exchanging life stories in which we needed to make revolutionary change, and what that was like, and what the triggers were like, and how that connected to the way we think about trading. And it took us to some profound and surprising areas. I've posted a sample of that session on Patreon with permission of the guys, because that session was really pretty good. Here's another sample true story from yesterday that I thought was really good as well, in which we were talking about, among other things, intention. And I gave an explanation of this diagram about 4-dimensional complex beings like ourselves, which look suspiciously like soccer balls, and how we are constantly rotating and changing through time and space, and that what we see of each other at any given time is really just the face-to-face surface, which is a manifestation of what's going on inside the 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions of that ball. But in that moment of connection, we're able to actually exchange information in the form of a story. And then those connections from stories allow us to build networks of action and partners, and give us the ability to act in the world in collaborative ways for mutual benefit. So that's a pretty good story worth listening to, and that link will lead you to it. That's also on Patreon for the folks. We are in lesson 5 of 30. We're getting ready to finish up part 1 of 6 in that course, where section 1 looked at some of the essential elements of creativity. In sections 2 through 6, we go deeper into creativity and how to apply it in our world and in our trading. So guys are pretty happy with where we are and what we're doing, and we can recommend the course to you for some transformational ideas. That's what I wanted to say about that. All right, that's everything I got for you tonight. Once again, if you've got charts, You know, if you're a Patreon member and you get charts to post for commentary, this is the opportunity to do them. And it's free chicken. All right, that's everything I got. We'll get this published and posted, and we shall see you tomorrow.